Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And in today's video, we are going to be breaking down the results of the PvP changes that came in from last week. We're going to be reviewing my tier list here, which I constructed prior to actually seeing what was going to be happening. This was a prediction and anticipation of what types of power we were going to be expecting for the specializations. And we're going to be moving this tier list around a little bit and tweaking it as we look at the data, as I give some of my own opinion, having played now for the past couple of days. And if you want to make sure that you're staying up to date with news related to World of Warcraft, educational and entertaining content, then please press the subscribe button. Your support is greatly appreciated on my long-term goal of getting to 100,000 subscribers. But let's get started here. So first specialization was Frost Mage, and I think this is the best spec in the game, almost bar none in all content for PvP. 1v1s, world PvP, no matter what it is. But this tier list was mostly for solo shuffle. When we look at the data for what happened with Frost Mage, there was a little bit of a steep drop off from the tuning, even despite the fact that there was basically nothing for you. I'm curious to know why this giant drop off. Now, maybe it's possible because warriors got nerfed quite heavily. And hunters likely stepped up a little bit. I think rogues were a little bit more viable when we look at the kind of like the melee DPS range. You'll see Fury Warriors absolutely falls off a cliff. Arms Warrior is actually scaling way higher than I thought. To me, this is a bubble. All right, like if this was the stock market, I think we're in an Arms Warrior bubble. I think that this number is deeply inflated. I think a lot of Fury Warriors panic sold, bought Arms Warrior stocks and trying to protect their assets because they don't want to tank the rating they got with how strong Fury was before. But I think this is a bubble. I do not think that Arms Warrior is up this high, but maybe the Fury Warrior trending downward is a cause for concern, because this is really strange to see this. Even Elemental Shaman, we see like a steep drop off, even despite the fact that there weren't basically any changes. I think this drop off is not necessarily indicative that Frost Mage is not still the number one spec in the game. I think we're leaving that one there. It's definitely still going to be locked in for me. For Beast Mastery Hunter, still kind of trending towards more of the middle of the pack here. It looks like Warlock's actually started to have a little bit of an uprising, and Arcane has seen a huge surge. Arcane went up from 6 to 10%. This might be the highest representation I've seen for Arcane Mage almost ever. But Beast Mastery, I feel like this guy is a sleeper. You're in the middle of the pack. No one's really paying attention to you. Marksmanship hunters get massive crit damage. But I swear Beast Mastery Hunter, maybe I'll be fair and I'll pull Beast Mastery Hunter down from S to A tier for now. But I swear Beast Mastery is the most slept on specialization in the game. It's just really good, just really solid, especially as pack leader. Now, Feral Druid, I got this one ranked really high on S tier, and I even played some Feral Druid this week, although it was because someone gifted subs for me to play it. I normally don't play a lot of Feral Druid. I just my brain can't handle it. It's a really complicated spec. You guys are still trending kind of towards like the bottom. Like Rets and Warriors have just completely taken over. I don't think Ret Paladin is not a bubble though. Ret Paladin is still going to be, I think, holding strong here. Feral Druid just requires a lot of intuition, a lot of brain power, and honestly, my head starts hurting after playing it for a bit, trying to juggle in Blood Talons and figure out when I need to be buffing my bleeds, and do I have all 5 of my bleeds, and did I get a Ferocious Bite proc, and like there's a lot that you're managing on Feral Druid, so my brain gets overwhelmed by it. So I'm not surprised that unless Feral Druid is like ridiculously strong, that you would just play a Ret Paladin because it's just easier than it is to play a Feral Druid. So honestly, maybe Feral Druid, again, this is a shuffle tier list. I think AWC, if we had like a tournament, it would be dominated by FMP and maybe a couple of Ret Warriors, but for the most part, I think FMP is likely still going to dominate. But when we're talking solo shuffle, maybe I'm ranking this spec a little bit too high. I think I might be ranking it a little bit too high. So I'm going to drag Feral Druid down from S to A off my own personal experience. Now, Windwalker, on the other hand, you guys are still kind of just trending at a really above average level, right? Like still at 9% on overall representation. And I actually played some Windwalker yesterday. It's really good. It does a remarkable amount of damage. Requires a little bit more intuition than Ret Paladin because you're hit combo and trying to remember to not press the same button twice in a row while still maximizing which ability you need to press is a little bit more engagement required, but it's really good. I think it's really good. Now, Windwalker's mainly, my struggle has been like Frost Mage Dev Evoker particularly was really tough. And when we look at the trends for Dev Evoker, it's not really that popular, and Frost Mage is coming down, although Arcane's coming up, and Arcane will be just as difficult as Dev or Frost in those types of matchups, but it's still really good. I do, in Shuffle, I do want to leave Windwalker up here on S tier. I think it's still one of the best melee. Holy Priest, when we look at healers, which I think were the ones that received some of the most significant changes, you see the graph really evening out. Poor Prez Evoker, dude. Poor Prez Evoker. You guys are just still... am I cutting the graph off here with my bald egghead? Poor Prez Evokers. Everybody else is kind of bouncing up into the mix, so you guys are still just flying at the bottom, bro. But everybody on Resto Druid seems to have just given up on it, even despite the fact that there wasn't really a lot. Like, it was just mana changes. So I don't know if people are trying to protect their rating or what's going on with that, or maybe it was a bubble the whole time and Resto Druid maybe was more equal with Holy. But Disc is actually taking the lead over Holy Priest when it comes to Shuffle. Now, I do think the healer balance is probably the most difficult to tell. I still think Holy Priest is one of the best healers. I think the Angel Form immunity and the Tree Form immunity that Druid and Priest bring at the moment are just really good in the meta for surviving through the first round of burst damage that a lot of other healers might just completely panic through and not be able to so easily deal with. So I think I'm going to still leave Druid and Holy as the number one healers, but Disc is still looking really good, and I think I had it at A tier, which is fair. I think that this is where it's ended up. Resto Shaman, I thought that I had overrated when I was looking at healers. I really had thought that I overrated it, but I don't know. It seems like it's doing pretty well. It's past Paladin. It's on the heels of the Priests, converging in with Druid. My experience with it is that it's really solid. I like the kind of like anti-mobility it has, where you knock enemies around and pull them around with Static Field Totem. I think that it's honestly getting you to a better spot. I actually wonder how much of this has to do with Electrocute, because I didn't try Electrocute. I'm going to have to try that on my stream, which is linked in the description down below. It's possible that Electrocute is actually... I feel like it can't be, but maybe it is, causing a little bit of disruption there for the Druids, and maybe that's why we're seeing this little bit of an uptick on Shaman. But Shaman seems really good on ladder. Holy Paladin, you guys are still just riding, I think, in a really healthy spot. You guys have just been going right through, so I think A tier is more than solid. Maybe you're like, could debate whether or not Shaman or Paladin, like which one is better, I think, in Shuffle. But it's definitely still in a great spot. And now I'm kind of just focused in on the healers, and we should have done this section by section. So Mistweaver seems better than it was before. I think it got more substantial buffs than Prez Evoker. Prez Evoker got like a little bit of a touch up, but I don't think it was really enough. He's still kind of run out mana faster than a lot of other healers, and it's really tough to do with the pacing. And I've been spending a lot of time. I'm getting close to my 2400 challenge on Prez Evoker. But Mistweaver seems like it just got way more benefits. You're still susceptible to crowd control, which is still a major weakness, but definitely like overall throughput. And because people aren't as coordinated in Shuffle, I think you can still get a lot done. So like Mistweaver, I could honestly almost consider bumping up. I think we're gonna leave it here, but it's better than Prez, so we'll rotate those ones around. I'd said that Prez was better likely, but I think Mistweaver is probably better. But I think they're still kind of on the bottom. So healers overall, I think I was pretty close to spot on for expectations as far as predictions, and where they ended up as a result. I think the core mechanics of these classes is just too punishing at the moment. But the throughput definitely helped, which is what I noted before. So for melee DPS, when we track Rep Paladin, we're just immediately doing this, bro. We're just bonking you back up to S tier. Yeah, I shouldn't have brought you down. Rep Paladin is remarkably strong still. I think it's probably the best melee DPS for Shuffle. Just really good overall throughput. Seems like it doesn't have any major matchup weaknesses anymore still, even despite the nerfs that came through it. So I was a bit like, hey, I brought it down. I thought it would lose a little bit of momentum, but I don't think it has, and I don't think this is the Ret bubble. Ret is still just definitely really smashing. Demon Hunter is starting to get a little bit of an upswing here, this little purple line, and I do think that Demon Hunter is probably even better than Frail Druid maybe here for solo Shuffle. It's got really good damage somewhere in here. I think is a fair spot. Definitely still really good. Arms Warrior has, again, I think it's a bubble. It's a bubble. I think that it's good. It does really good burst damage. Definitely, I think it might be better than Fury. I definitely think it might be a tiny bit better than Fury. I think actually maintaining your Mortal Strike stacks. I played a little bit of Arms. I'm going to have to play some Fury now too, to kind of scale them against each other, but I do think Arms is slightly better, but I think they still have really core issues with these guys, with Frost Mages, with Shamans, and with Hunters. And there's a lot of those, right? There's a lot of the hunters and shamans, so, and mages. So likely warrior A tier, this could be a bubble, and maybe you just bounce back down to B tier. But for now, we'll just leave it there. Assassination rogue, honestly, don't see a lot of it, but I think it's still really solid. Honestly, maybe subtlety rogue is slightly coming out ahead of it, actually. I keep ranking subtlety really low because of its stun mechanic and the fact that if you play a DPS aren't coordinated and they put your stuns on DR and you can't set up your burst, it's like really difficult. But subtlety rogue is, I think, is better than this. So I am going to pull subtlety rogue up. I think subtlety rogue is definitely better than B tier. I think it's maybe getting slept on a bit. I think it's actually got really solid baseline for itself at the moment. But Fury Warrior, I think Fury Warrior, like maybe it could be A tier, but I think it's falling off. I think it's falling off. I think it's going to continue falling off a bit. I think the Mortal Strike change as time goes on is going to be the main reason. So I'm actually going to leave this here. I think it's going to start falling off. I think the warrior bubble is here and it's been popped. Outlaw rogue, you guys are still trending really low at the moment. Honestly, maybe I should be lowering outlaw rogues performance just a little bit even. I don't know, because it's still got the best crowd control in the game. Still has decent damage. I think it's just lost a little bit of steam, but it's still really good. As far as C tier, I think this is still pretty spot on for the worst melee at the moment with Unholy, Frost, Survival, and Enhancement. When we look at the trends, right, like Frost is falling even further. Enhance is still trending really low. Survival is still trending really low. Not to say that you can't make these specs work. Like, if you are the absolute best of these specs, you can absolutely make them work, but you're probably going to have to sweat a lot more. So it depends on how much sweat versus reward that you want with these specializations. Isn't to say that they are like completely unviable, but as far as like performance relative to the rest of the pool, I think it's fair to be putting these 4 down here still. So I'm pretty good with where their position ended up being. As far as range DPS, Marksmanship Hunter, I think it's really good. It's kind of cheesy. Like you probably are one of the few remaining specs that can completely KO somebody, which is really good in shuffle because they're not prepared for it. Still kind of just the middle. I think you still get really farmed by disarm and stun classes, and disarm stun classes are still decently good, if not really good at the moment. So I think that does prevent you from going to S tier. I think you're still a little bit fragile in that regard, but yeah, I think A tier is a solid spot for it. Ellie Shaman, I'm honestly going to bump up. I think that S tier is actually where Ellie Shaman belongs. I think it's following like almost in parallel with Frost Mage at the moment. I think I went a little bit too shallow on that one, probably because my experience on Ellie Shaman has been no set bonus Resto Shaman gear. But as I get more geared up and I get the set bonus, as I see more Ellie Shamans, I definitely think it's still a really good spec. So I think I was wrong about this one. Bump it up to S tier. Dev Evoker A tier I think is definitely more than fair. Just routing through the middle, has really good matchups. And a lot of times you don't see like a lot of caster lobbies anymore. So it's just really good in the melee. Can struggle with casters, but really good in the melee. Arcane, I actually somewhat want to bump up to S, but at the same time I want to reserve S for like 1 or 2 specs. So maybe we'll bump like Arcane up like this. So it's like the best of the A tier. Again, like left to right is best to worst on this given tier itself. Shadow Priest, just still kind of middle of the pack, gonna have difficulties. The Nurse of Fury definitely helpful, but Shadow Priest gets crunched by Windwalker. I think Windwalker is still really good. You're lucky though that not a lot of people play Windwalker, so you don't really need to worry about it as much. But Windwalker definitely still crunches you as far as counters, so I think that's kind of holding you back at the moment from being like an S tier specialization. Demonology, when we looked at the lock specs, Demo is starting to scale, but Affliction is actually still outpacing it, and I still think Demo is the best lock spec at the moment. But Affliction Warlock players, man, you guys are refusing to let the spec die. I feel like there's a couple of specs in the game where like people never give up on them no matter what. It's like Arms Warriors, Affliction Locks, and Frost Mages. Those are like the core like specs that you played that spec. You play that spec forever. You ride or die, no matter what. I'm still surprised. I guess maybe not. Maybe I shouldn't be that surprised because Warrior coming down, like it was a ghost town as far as Warriors on like the first couple of days. Like every Warrior was so afraid of losing rating. They didn't know where the nerfs were going to put their specs. They just didn't queue. So I think a lot of these Warlocks kind of like upticking like this is warriors just didn't queue, and maybe that's what this reverse trend is. The mage and shamans are coming down because there wasn't warriors for them to farm, and then the warlocks didn't have to deal with the warriors for a day or two, so now they came up and they're taking all their raiding. I think that ultimately explains the graph here a little bit more as to what's going on. And I think the warrior bubble might still be a bubble, so shuffle warlock might have a little bit more of a shot, but I think demo, I'm still going to leave it on A tier. So I think it's the best lock spec. Affliction Destra I think is more fair here at B. I think they're still a little bit more squishy, can be more difficult to deal with. Current melee specializations at the moment in the game for you guys. Same thing for Boomkin. I think offense is definitely an A tier, maybe an S tier, but its defense is so low that it drops it down. Og is still the cheese spec, right? Still the cheese spec riding in at the bottom. Fire is surprisingly doing randomly a little bit better. It's kind of coming back up to its 3% of its all-time high on the chart, but I still think Fire is just, compared to Arcane and Frost, it's not even that it's necessarily a bad spec, it's just Arcane and Frost have so many more advantages over it, and there's no like unique reason to bring the Fire Mage, so it's still coming in here for me at the bottom. Destruction Warlock, I think we already spoke on this, but I think middle of the pack is still fair. I could definitely be wrong about Fury. I could be wrong about the Warrior bubble, but I think it's a bubble. I think Warrior has some difficulties with a lot of these specs. These specs are going to start outshining it over time, and the Warrior bubble might actually be coming down a bit. And I think Rogue, honestly, I'm going to have to finish leveling my Rogue. It basically, at the moment, it kind of feels bad to be a DK or an Enhanced Shaman or Survival Hunter. You're just going to not really getting the most amount of attention in the game. And I think from core identity, Frost DK, like they have to basically reverse all of the damage they've done to the spec by turning you guys into a Feast Famine spec again. Unholy just needs defense. I think it's been the case, right? Like a little bit of defense. It's Friday, it's patch day. Maybe they're gonna do it. We need just a little bit of defense on Moonkins, a little more defense on Warlock, a little more defense on DK. Survival, I don't even know. Honestly, it needs like a little bit more lockdown, I think, to become more viable. Enhancement Shaman maybe needs the Ret rework treatment where it becomes like a quasi-range DPS of like 20 yards. Because that's the main issue, is that it just doesn't Immortal Strike, so it doesn't synergize really well. Being a melee means that when it stacks other melee, it just gets absolutely clobbered. I think are main core issues for it. Fire, honestly, just needs Frost to get nerfed, like Frost to do less instant damage. I think if Frost couldn't get away with doing basically instant damage through an entire match, and Fire's advantage was that it was the instant cast mage spec, then there would be situations where Fire could likely shine a bit brighter than Frost. But Frost is just so good right now with how much damage it can do instantly, its defense relative to Fire, that I just don't see that happening. But a lot of specs have improved, I think, greatly. I think the healer balance most definitely has improved, and I think it's been seen, at least for me, in the queue times that I've been playing. Occasionally you still get a long queue, but a lot of my queues have actually been pretty fast, so I think a lot of the healers are excited to try the changes out in the balance, and to me that's like most important thing. And I think this goes for Mythic Plus as well, is that they just need to make sure healers are balanced. It's not just, oh my god, one healer is so much better than every other healer, because then you can't pull anyone in LFG to form a group, because you need that one healer. Now, instead of being able to pull from, what is it, like 6 or 7 healers, you can only pull one, and not everybody wants to play that one, and then you just like, the healer balance is super important. So I'm very glad they focused on that. I think that they did do a decent job with it. It pulled Mistweaver, especially Resto Shaman, up a bit, caused some confusion here for the other top healers, which is great. Didn't nerf them so heavily that they just completely fell off a cliff down here to the bottom. Prez still needs some. I think Prez and Mistweaver still need some tools to be added to their kit. You could still just continue giving them throughput to try and push them over the top, but I feel like if you just keep giving them throughput, eventually they just become the god healer, and then they're the only healer anyone wants to play, which is bad. But overall, I think it was a decent patch. I really am hoping on this Friday we're going to see a little bit of a tweak, a little bit of a tune-up for a lot of the guys here on the B and below, except you, Og. We don't like you. No, Og. But this B and below, I'm hoping for like a little bit of a tune-up, because I feel like everybody on A and above, you guys are chilling. You guys are pretty happy. I think the game is likely going to be really good for you, really fun for you. B and below, you're going to experience some frustrations, some difficulties. And maybe I'm wrong about Fury Warrior, okay? But I think it's a bubble, and I'm leaving it in B. So I hope you guys enjoyed this breakdown and this update, my thoughts on it. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.